Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica, and I'm here to moderate this awesome panel. First, I'll give just a brief introduction about the topics we're going to cover. AI. Woo! So these companies are at the forefront of GenAI and open source, which is why we're here. The GenAI wave and the broad adoption of LLMs has really just taken the world and businesses by storm. But with it comes new development paradigms. For example, what is the development experience like now with LLMs? What is the cost calculus and the ROI of GenAI, especially in this agentic world that we're embarking on? And also, what is the technical expertise needed to build in this new stack that we're calling it? And last but not least, what is the role of open source as we all learn together how to build in this new world? So as a first order of business, I'd like to let each of these panelists make an introduction. If you can please share your name, company, and from your perspective, how your company is meeting this moment. We'll start with you, Guillermo.
Hi, I'm Guillermo, and I'm the founder and CEO of Vercel, creators of Next.js. And very similarly to what we're trying to do with Next.js, which is make it easier and lower the barrier of entry to publishing amazing websites on the internet and web applications, we're doing the same with AI products, especially in the TypeScript and JavaScript ecosystem with our AI SDK. If you've seen billboards in San Francisco, it's just the AI package on NPM. And the idea is simple. It should just take a couple lines of code to get started building AI products. So that's our mission with the AI SDK. And the other thing is, as you were saying, generative AI is cool. What's even cooler is generative UI. So we're setting out to basically move forward with adding UI elements into your AI generations. You might have seen V0, which is the easiest way to convert text to front ends, but also creating applications that blend the best of both worlds of what a ChatGPT type application can do, but also bring elements of UI like traditional web applications. So those are the main things we're working on at Vercel.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Julia. I lead go-to-market at LangChain. And so for those of you who don't know what LangChain is, we're probably the most popular standard for how people build LLM apps. We give people building blocks so that you can make applications that are context aware, that reason. And so what that means is LLMs, when you get them off the shelf, they know nothing about your business. They don't know anything or don't have access to your APIs. We make it really easy for you to take your business context and get the most out of your LLMs to do interesting things for your business. And we have, I think, 1 million developers at this point in our open source community. We have a Python and TypeScript package. And then our commercial offering is something called Langsmith that really helps with the LLM DevOps workflow. And so when you're building with LLMs, you'll realize they're finicky, they have peculiar characteristics, and you'll have to reimagine how you develop them, debug them, how do you test and evaluate something that's fundamentally non-deterministic, and how do you observe it so that when it's live in production, you have confidence that things are going well, or if not, you can take action. And so those are kind of our 2 flagship products, but we do a lot with agents and RAG as well. Excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Dmytro. I'm co-founder and CTO of fireworks.ai. So what we're building now is a developer-friendly generative AI platform where focused primarily on open source models. So our goal is to get to the highest quality and the best performance for a variety of use cases across all different modalities. And in my previous life, I was working many years on deep learning frameworks, in particular PyTorch, so as one of the core maintainers. And I'm kind of super excited to bring a lot of this open source developer experience focus of PyTorch to kind of also GenAI wave of innovation, where some challenges are similar, some challenges are different. And yeah, on Fireworks side, so we pride ourselves to being one of the fastest providers, and we work with Vercel and LangChain, all the companies, but also focusing on kind of the developer experience and empowering developers also to get to the best quality and customization, which is in particular possible with open source models.
Awesome. Well, just to make it super concrete for this crowd, I'm going to kick off with a nice general question of what is the coolest thing that you've seen built with GenAI? And I'd love to get each of your perspectives because you're coming from such different product areas of the development lifecycle. So would love to get that, and I'll go in the reverse order this time. So Dmytro, what is the coolest thing that you've seen built?
I mean, I'm probably biased as a developer, but yeah, I'm really excited about all the kind of coding assistance agents, etc. Which I mean, there have been like a lot of flashy demos, but what is really exciting is like I see kind of there's this like spectrum of products ranging from copilots and kind of smarter and smarter autocompletes to more kind of cutting edge agent, or I'm gonna automate software engineering kind of thing. And it's been like flashy demos happen on both sides, but it's really exciting that like those two kind of ends of the spectrum kind of start slowly approaching each other, and you really can imagine this kind of augmented AI developer, mystical or non-mystical 10x engineer, which I think like the kind of synergy in the sweet spot in the middle is really exciting. And I've been using it in my development, and we have some of the customers working this, and it's pretty amazing what you can kind of achieve through symbiosis on that side.
Did you have like a moment where you use this? You mentioned they're like kind of demo-like, but was there a moment where you're like, wow, this really helped me?
I mean, I think it just even day to day, like I think the demos are flashy, but what changes is like when you notice like, yeah, like you are several times more productive by using these tools, and it's pretty amazing. It's like day to day inconsistency matters even more in those cases than just like flashy stuff.
Well, what about you?
I'll give a shout out to two companies that are building with LangChain, and they're kind of representative of exciting use cases that we see. The first is a Copilot use case, kind of like you mentioned, but Roblox Studio has a really awesome Copilot where you can describe a virtual world or an asset that you want to put in your gaming studio, and you can see it come alive. They'll come up with AI scripts. You just give it a prompt, or you'll describe a virtual world, and a scene just comes alive before your eyes, which is really a creative use case that gets people to imagine and inspire what's possible. And then the other one, if you're not a Roblox user, you can go to TripAdvisor really easily and check out their AI itinerary search, which is also kind of mind-blowing and impressive. You just describe, these are the dates I'm going to Austin with my friends, I'm an art lover and a food lover, and they'll come up with a 5-day itinerary of all their recommendations, and you can actually book then on TripAdvisor. And it's exactly the kind of experience you want when you're going to a new place. It's a concierge search-like experience. And so those are kind of the three things that we see people build, is like Copilot, concierge search, and things for operational efficiency. And these two from Roblox and TripAdvisor, I think, can really get your creative juices going on what the art of possible is.
For me, there's a couple that come to mind just from the last couple of days on V0. And if you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen them because I tweeted about them. But so one was one of our users created a travel booking app. So they just entered the text travel booking app, and out came 3 awesome travel booking UIs. So for context, V0 kind of works like GitHub gists. So you can have public generations or private generations. So you can go and check out what people are generating. And so that one stood out to me because it looked really cool. Then the other day, I got a message from someone that didn't know anything about front end. And thanks to AI and V0, they could create a really awesome looking social network for tattoo enthusiasts built with V0. And it just looked awesome on mobile. If you're familiar with UI engineering, like getting mobile web to work the way you want is sometimes hard. So I appreciate that AI is also helping with that. I also was blown away recently by a product called Hume. Demo.hume.ai. It's an emotional AI voice platform, and the demo is spectacular. So you just talk to it, and the inflection of the voice is incredible. So it's just been amazing to see the progress that customers are having with these platforms and creating their own AI platforms on top. And yeah, so we're here to sort of provide the dev tools and infrastructure to make those innovations possible.
Wait, what do you do with this Hume thing? I didn't catch that.
So you can go to demo.hume.ai, hosted on Vercel, of course. Yeah. And so you talk to it, and it can basically, it's the first AI with emotional intelligence in the voice. So it has more inflections of the tone of voice. It can sound concerned. It can sound serious, professional. And what I thought was really cool for developers is that there's metadata that governs the voice quality. So you can actually like say, I'm assuming in like a JSON payload, you can say, well, make it sound really serious right now, or make it sound really relaxed because I'm providing support. So we're getting more knobs as developers to make these AIs more personalized. And I was reflecting on how cool this is because like not too many years ago, Siri, like building Siri seemed like out of reach for everybody, except for like some people at Cupertino. And now we have like better than Siri voice technology. Like, because I would love for Siri to be more personalized to me, right? Or my children in the way that it engages and so on, instead of like it's this flat voice. So it's cool that now developers, the best time to be a developer or startup building with AI, because we're democratizing the future of technology, and it's just a couple API calls away.
That's awesome. That's a really great example. And the 10x kind of comment that you made as well, Dmytro. Going into kind of the other side, like this is the amazing side of building with GenAI. I'd like to also maybe touch upon the pain points of building with GenAI. It's quite easy to kind of get started, you know, call these AI APIs and put together an app. But when we're trying to productionize something, right? What are you seeing out there in the field? What does it take to go from like 0 to 1, but then 1 beyond? Start with you, Julie.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge right now is really easy to create an exciting demo. I think we help lots of people create demos in LangChain, but the effort that it takes to get to the Roblox Studio example, or the effort it takes to get to the TripAdvisor example, is a whole lot more effort. There's really a feat of engineering that needs to happen to improve quality. And quality is the bottleneck right now, from going from this is a cool example on a few use cases versus I can put this live in front of millions of end users. And so people have to think about, how do I get quality higher in a wholly different way? And that's one of the problems we're trying to help people solve, because you're dealing with one, you don't know what the inputs are going to be because they're usually text. That's a hard problem to solve. And then couple that with the non-determinism of the technology with the LLMs, and you just compound where getting the system to do something well at scale is a really hard problem. And you have to rethink about the entire workflows of how do you test and gain confidence, because you're never going to be able to write the unit test or a functional end-to-end test. You just have to observe over lots and lots of inputs and see how you've moved the metrics that you care about. And so I think a lot of where we are today in the industry is we're much more in the art world than the science world. And what we're trying to do is bring that engineering best practices and that rigor to the field so we can ship more high quality products that do impress and wow people.
Dmytro, as part of the model side of things, how are you seeing the difficulties of building, especially, you know, with the non-determinism, if you switch a model, you know, let alone a request from the same LLM, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely quality is kind of a big problem area, just because these models are statistical, right? Which means that it's easy to get them working 90% of the time. It's really hard to squish last 10%. On that, I mean, in addition to awesome points Julia did, like I would also add that like sometimes it's going for like more narrow use case and like constraining what you're trying to do makes it easier to kind of get there. Like your chat support bot probably doesn't need to write poems, etc. So like by focusing on a small subset, it's possible to kind of constrain it to like enforce guardrails more strictly, because you're not trying to cover the entire distribution. And that's where I think like model customization, kind of fine tuning, like etc. really comes into play. We've seen pretty good examples with that. Like in addition to quality, I would also add second kind of problem area is like when demos work and when kind of quality gets good. As you scale up, like for many companies, like cost becomes an issue, because these models are expensive. They require a lot of GPUs or accelerators or whatever. And yeah, we've seen that kind of optimizing, I mean, that's something which we also do with our customers, like optimizing kind of performance, and both for customer experience, for example, for Hume kind of like style voice assistant, like latency would be really important, how quickly you react and respond, but also from total cost of ownership, like when the product scale, how to keep the cost down, etc. That becomes like top of mind for a lot of customers as they kind of get into production at the larger scale. So.
Yeah, that I'm like torn which direction to take this, because the quality aspect is like so important, so interesting, but cost, you just brought up a whole nother box. So want to get one more perspective from Guillermo about the quality. How are people actually iterating on quality? Like maybe make it concrete for this audience what it means to say, okay, this is great, it's working, but now how do you say it's ready for launch?
Yeah, I would argue, like Julia said, the easiest thing seems like it's to launch your product, because you're going to get a lot of attention on launch day. It's like cool to show off new AI capabilities, but then to sustain that capability and improve it upon time, definitely challenging. It's challenging from an infrastructure perspective, because the guarantees and SLAs on quality, inference time, throughput, they're not there compared to like the expectations that the cloud has set that are so high. Like if you compare the availability and performance and elasticity of a service like Dynamo versus a service like a lot of the GPU inference services out there, except for Fireworks, of course, it's like night and day. Like the cloud, the AI clouds are not there from a quality perspective themselves, let alone the products that build on top. So you're constantly kind of fighting availability challenges, rerouting. The different data centers don't have the same latency and throughput consistency across them. So it's challenging from that point of view. But then the other one that you're touching on is evaluations and maintaining your own quality over time. Like, how do you get confidence that when you change a prompt, change your RAG data, change a model checkpoint version, that your product is actually trending in the right direction? And you see this at every level of scale. Like, there's all these conspiracy theorists on X that say, oh, ChatGPT got like axed this week. Like its AQ just went down. They're dumbing it down. They're in some like cigar-filled room out there. They're holding it back from us. They give it to the aliens. And in reality is that as they improve ChatGPT, there's clusters of queries for which it might get worse, and clusters of queries for which it might get infinitely better. So I think it's still a challenge, but I encourage folks to be a lot more thoughtful about their evaluations and the CI/CD for their AI applications. And I still think it's early days for this, but an area that's really exciting for us.
Awesome, thank you. And then going on the cost, I think, you just mentioned ChatGPT, but then, Fireworks, we've got these open models. How do we see the decision there, the choice? Do we just call APIs, don't worry about the models, the general LLMs are good enough for my use case? Or, like you said, we need to go narrow, or we have certain quality bars, our cluster of queries are better for this or that, and we want more control. Would love your perspective on the model side of things, and open models versus closed models, and maybe even the cost. Whoa, I just threw so much at you, but yeah, we'll start there.
Sure. There are several kind of overlapping dimensions here. Open versus closed is fundamentally about control and testability, right? Like if you know which weights of the model you're running, then you kind of can guarantee that nobody out there went and dumped it down or whatever. But I think what is more exciting is that, as I said earlier, for majority of business use cases, you don't really need the smartest model in every possible domain. The use case is pretty narrow, whether it's some structured data extraction or some support chatbot or whatever. So we've seen actually very good kind of success rate with, you can start prototyping, GPT-4 is amazing, and frontier tier models are amazing for prototyping and getting things started. But then if you're trying to control cost and to actually really kind of focus it on particular use case and particular set of queries, then often taking even smaller models, but really targeting it on particular use case and set of distributions helps a lot on both of those dimensions. And I think that's actually something which would be happening more and more in terms of kind of end business applications. Of course, it depends on what you're building. If you're building kind of general assistants like ChatGPT, then you probably want to have them the best model out there, or maybe you want to do like dynamic routing, depending on the query, which I think even even ChatGPT does behind the hood. But for many use cases, with use cases more narrowed down, you can focus on that more specifically. And again, being able to actually see the model weights, or be able to like customize and tune it, opens a lot of possibilities, including kind of addressing the quality. I think the dream there is basically getting real-time feedback loop from the application and incorporating that in kind of as a feedback for the model, both as a kind of quality evaluation mechanism, but also for like improving model performance, like future iterations, because that's fundamentally what you want to do for like any kind of machine learning system. It's harder to do for LMs given the scale and like diversity, but still that's kind of the holy grail of product building with ML.
And you mentioned if you want to control costs, you might want to go this route. But at the same time, there's the infrastructure to support maybe hosting your own model or doing the fine tuning, GPUs, things like that. Are you seeing that cost? Like, what is the calculus there versus calling an API?
So I mean, calling API is kind of orthogonal to open and closed weights. So I mean, for example, we provide API, and like majority of our customers use our hosted platform. So it is just the same API as OpenAI.
Fireworks platform.
But you are calling like Llama or Mistral or some derivative which you built on top of those. So yeah, you can totally use API and like offload. You can offload infrastructure concerns to a provider while still being kind of in control of quality and like which model you're running, etc. And similarly for like fine tuning, I mean, the important part, like which data goes in and like which maybe recipes you're using for doing that, whether it's running on GPU under your desk or in the cloud provider or on fireworks.ai or whatever, doesn't really matter. Just like for traditional application building, like move to cloud providers or Vercel or whatever, doesn't mean that you are not building your application and you're still like in control of what the experience is.
Great. All right, and then another one is scaling out. So there's one dimension which is quality, but then there's also suddenly serving from 10 demo customers to 1 million daily active users. So do you have Julia? Do you have any comments on especially being one of the most popular orchestration frameworks out there? That scale, what are you seeing out in the field?
It's kind of the Wild West. People are doing some funny things to make it work. So we talk to customers and they'll have to rotate between 30 OpenAI keys just so they don't get rate limited. And then they have to have like a proxy to manage, and no one can get an API key. And it is like you have to have like a second order of engineering operations just to manage availability. And this is absolutely no shade at OpenAI, because they're when it comes to quality, they really are the best. But it's just the state of the world right now, and GPUs are not available. And so what we see people trying to do is doing all this extra engineering work just to be able to call an API, which you do not have to think about that in most other disciplines. And then you have these like second order problems of which application called this API, or how much cost is associated with this project. And so we do see people building a lot of infrastructure just to support the reliability that they need. And the other thing that people are really keen on or focused in on right now is latency. That's often the biggest problem for folks when they're building LLM-powered apps, because if you want to do anything sophisticated or something that can reason, there are a lot of steps often in checking that needs to happen before you can return a response to your end user. And every step that you take takes more latency. And so we really help people think through some of these trade-offs, where how do you get the latency requirements that you need? Can you think about a different user experience that doesn't necessarily need to be very quick latency around chat, where most apps right now are in that chat high interaction phase? And then how do you scale beyond the infrastructure problems of I can't even get an API that's available at the rates that I need?
And going along with that, Julia, you mentioned Langsmith being for observability. What kind of observability challenges go along with that?
So the cool thing about Langsmith is what we help you do really is observability. Sure, on latency, you can spot when things go down, but there's a whole other part of observability when you're dealing with semantics, because it's text. So quality, what did I actually respond to my end user? You need that system of record of what was the question, how did my agent or my RAG flow take which steps to get to the end result. So you have this level of explainability and defensibility where if you did something wrong, you can go spot that really easily and then hopefully iterate and fix it in a future version that you ship. But also just understanding quality and some of these more soft metrics. Is my tone accurate? Is my tone in line with my brand? What topics are people asking to my app? There's a whole set of other types of visibility that you're going to need when you let something wild and being used by millions of end users that really keyed around the conversation that happens, not just errors, latency, and performance. And that's where I think it's really fun. There's a whole nother field around online evaluation. People are using LLMs to grade outputs, which is a whole nother wacky world. But it tends to be a really good way where you can get trend lines and visibility into millions of conversations that are happening where you're not really in the room.
Yeah, that's nuts. LLMs on LLMs on LLMs. All right. Well, with just a few minutes left, I just want to close out with just the open source theme here. What role do you feel like open source is playing as all of these engineers are jumping into this GenAI application wave? What are people getting from open source that we in the open source community already knew, but is there kind of like this special role that open source plays in this application development environment? I'll start with you, Guillermo.
Yeah, for us, open source plays a vital role. Number one, with the Vercel AI SDK, one of the big things we're pushing for is giving customers optionality so that they don't necessarily lock themselves into a particular model choice or vendor for the rest of their application's life. So a good example would be the function calling interface has now become a standard, first invented by OpenAI, but now become a standard across all kinds of model providers. So if customers use our open source AI SDK, then they buy themselves the option that, well, in the future I might replace, some proprietary model with Llama running at maybe higher performance, lower cost, and function calling support. So you're coding against a TypeScript interface instead of coding against the specific RESTful APIs or whatever that the provider is exposing. So that's super valuable. And we've already seen customers, AI moves so fast that you're actually better off not locking yourself too much into one provider, because with Llama 3, I think we've seen a lot of customers just like, hey, like this is cheaper and better for my needs. And also downscaling to model sizes, like you might start with a 1 quadrillion parameter model that's really expensive and produces a token per hour. And they're like, maybe I use Llama 8B, thank you, Zuck. So we've seen that a lot already with Mixtral as well. And then overall, just super optimistic about the open model ecosystem, because what I'm noticing is that when open models drop, there's this whole ecosystem of companies that take that model and do amazing things with it. Whether it's making inference faster, like the Grok folks or Fireworks are doing, or fine tunes or derivatives of those models. And just, we've seen so far how impactful it's been to create ecosystems around these things and not to get too tied down to the early mover and their early mover advantage. So super optimistic about open models as well.
Awesome, thank you. What about you, Dmytro?
Yeah, I guess I already talked about that we are strong believers in the kind of open weights models, and I think, yes, Guillermo mentioned, I think that's the future, and that like really spawns the communities, and you see it with llamas or with stable diffusion or other models that they're like all the crazy fine tunes and merges and all the kind of derivatives both on model side and on infrastructure side which pop out from that. And that's an indication of, one, people is excited, which is great, but also that there is like a lot of value in kind of customization and understanding what's going on, because there are thousands of different use cases, and the best way to kind of enable addressing all of them is kind of empower developers to be able to customize for those. And while it's GenAI is a new space, but fundamentally I think it's very approachable, and this kind of developer tooling and kind of best recipes diffuse more. It will become even more approachable because fundamentally, like with LMs, you're operating on English and text, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, like the base models, because they're so costly artifacts, like keeping them open is fundamentally allows the entire community and like entire world to progress faster.
Right. And Julia?
I think we largely agree. It's not so different in the LLM world as you would in any other developer framework. For LangChain, we are open source because that's how people want to build their application logic. It needs to be a standard and open. So we're firm believers of open source. And what we're seeing, especially in enterprises, that the industry moves way too quickly, and you want to future-proof any decision you've made today. And even 8 months ago, when I first joined LangChain, to where we are today, there's just a whole new slew of players, a lot more choice and flexibility. And so if you deeply embedded into one standard, like you got into the Microsoft ecosystem, you may have a hard time moving out of it. And so open source gives you that ability to keep pace with the cutting edge as it comes online.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And we'll be seeing you out there in the open source world.
Thank you.